Here's why you should get an A6300 instead of the new A64 or A6600. The reason is the price. If you go on eBay, you can get an A6300 for $600 used. Now, because the A6400 is kind of new, finding it on eBay is kind of like impossible. Okay, so yes, it's more expensive. So what do you gain? Well, the A6300, when it was released, was quite ahead of its time. It had a 24 megapixel APS-C sensor that shot 4K with downsampled 6K. That's like... It did all of that at 24p with no crop. And not only that, it had access to 120 frames per second in 1080p. All of that in this little tiny body. Not only that, it had reliable autofocus and shot 11 frames per second burst. The A6400 and the A6600 also have a 24 megapixel sensor that shoots 4K with downsampled 6K. So essentially it's the same camera. Okay, so where's my money going? Usability. So although the A6300 was ahead of its time, it still had many flaws in which the new cameras came about and fixed. These flaws include overheating, 30-minute record limit, tilting screen, screen dimming in 4K, battery life, bad colors, and the lack of IBIS. Now, let me tell you why these aren't as bad as you think they are. Overheating. So this one is not as bad as people think. So first, there's a setting called auto power off temp, and you have the option between standard and high. When you put it in standard, the thing just shuts off after like 15 minutes of 4K shooting. But if you put it in high, then it doesn't stop. I've stress tested this thing for like 1 hour of 4K shooting with AF on, and it was still running. Although it was kind of warm, it still worked. So the 30-minute record limit. So this one is kind of funny because you can actually just like disable it. I'll leave a video in the description below, just like it disables the 30-minute record limit thing. So the tilting screen. Okay, so this one is kind of controversial. Let me just say that with a wide-angle lens, I've never had a big issue with it, but also I kind of don't like looking at myself when I'm doing these things, because if I'm always like looking at the screen on the side, then like I'm not like, it's just awkward, it's weird. It's like, am I even talking to you right now? When I'm shooting with my Panasonic G7, I actually just like flip around the screen so like I can't see the screen, and then like I only look at the lens. Now the new Sonys actually have a flip up screen, which now you can like see yourself, but that still doesn't fix the problem where if you're trying to take a picture in like portrait mode, then like you can't like flip it. So that's still kind of annoying. Now I will say that there were days where I wish I had the flip screen. At one point I was vlogging and I didn't notice I had a finger in the shot, so I needed to crop that in post. I guess that's where your money's really going when you're buying the new Sonys, but I mean, if you're behind the camera, it's really not an issue. I mean, like, worst case scenario, if you really need a fully articulating screen, you can just buy a monitor, you know? Screen dimming in 4K. First of all, if you're in front of the camera, well, you can't see the screen, so it's not an issue. So I guess that's a fix, but not really. If you're behind the camera, then it's kind of an issue, but a really easy way to fix this is just by looking through the viewfinder actually. That not only fixes the issue, but now I can like I have an extra point of contact, so I have like more stable shots. So that's a way of doing it. Battery life. For photography, I've never had a big issue with battery life. I've shot with one battery, and really I've been fine. I don't see the issue here. When you're shooting in 1080p, the battery life is once again really good. It's not a problem. The real problem is when you're shooting in 4K. That's really when the camera's using all of its juice just to like pump up the best image quality it can. So that's when the battery life really dies off really quickly. And the fix for that is just buy more batteries. It's really not that big of a deal. Like, just leave one in your pockets and you're good. I mean, worst case scenario, if you really want it to last longer, you can just buy a battery grip. I mean, like, these things are really cheap and like they work. The colors. Okay, so first of all, I'll post my picture profile settings in the description below so you can copy it. It's supposed to emulate C-Log, and for the most part I've had good results. But essentially what I do is I just use a C-Log to Rec 709 converter and my colors look great. No IBIS. Sony has many image stabilized lenses, like a really good offering. This is a 50mm image stabilized lens. This 10-18 is image stabilized. This 18-105 is stabilized. So really, like, just get a stabilized lens. It's really not an issue. I guess if you want to get like the Sigma primes, those aren't stabilized. So at this point, like, you would need some sort of stabilizer. But like, there are many ways to stabilize your camera. Things like Steadicams, gimbals, tripods, I mean, the list goes on. Although it is kind of useful, not as important as you think. So I guess in the end of the day, the new Sony offerings are pretty incredible. But this Sony A6300 was just way ahead of its time. Although it did have some flaws, most of them are fixable.